I wasn't looking for secrets. That's the thing about betrayal. You never go searching for it. It finds you. It was a Saturday afternoon when I stumbled upon it. The attic was a dust-choked mess, a graveyard of forgotten things. I was up there sorting through old boxes, looking for an old photo album, something to remind me of the early days, before the distance, before the doubts. That's when I saw it, wedged between stacks of yellowed papers and moth-eaten sweaters. A small, leather-bound book. Natalie's diary. I hesitated. We weren't the kind of couple who kept secrets, at least, that's what I had believed for the past 8 years. But something about the way the book was hidden, tucked so carefully out of sight, made my chest tighten. My fingers closed around the worn leather, my pulse quickening. I sat down on an old wooden trunk, brushing off the dust, and flipped it open. At first, the words were harmless. Nostalgic, even. January 4th, I saw Mike today at the cafe. He didn't notice me at first, too busy reading the newspaper like an old man. I threw a sugar packet at his head. He looked up, annoyed, but then he smiled. That stupid smile that always gets me. I swear, I'm marrying that man one day. I felt a ghost of a smile tug at my lips. I remembered that day. The cafe, the sugar packet, the way she had laughed. But then I turned the page. April 22nd, I don't know how it happened. I keep telling myself it was just a moment of weakness, but deep down, I know that's a lie. It wasn't weakness. It was desire. And worse, I think I liked it. The air left my lungs. My hands tightened around the edges of the book, my knuckles white. I forced myself to keep reading. June 9th, he kissed me again. I let him. I should feel guilty, but all I feel is alive. A slow, sickening realization crawled up my spine. This wasn't just a diary. This was a confession. And it wasn't just about now. It was about before. Before the late nights at work. Before the distant kisses and half-hearted, I love yous. Before I had even begun to suspect. Natalie had been lying to me for years. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe. My vision blurred as I flipped through the pages, scanning entry after entry, each word slicing through me like a blade. Then, I saw his name. My best friend. The diary slipped from my hands, landing with a soft thud on the wooden floor. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at it. It was strange how silence could be so loud. And in that silence, everything I thought I knew about my wife, about my marriage, began to unravel. I sat there for what felt like hours, the diary at my feet, my mind unraveling one painful thread at a time. I wanted to believe it wasn't real, that this was some cruel joke, a misunderstanding, anything but the truth I had just read. But the ink didn't lie. Natalie had been unfaithful. And not just once. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to look at the page again. June 9th, he kissed me again. I let him. I should feel guilty, but all I feel is alive. He. I already knew who she meant. My best friend. Ethan. His name wasn't there, not yet. But I knew. The pieces had been floating in my mind for months, maybe even years, but I had been too blind, or too trusting, to put them together. The late nights. The inside jokes that felt just a little too intimate. The way she sometimes said his name in a way that made my stomach twist, but I had ignored it. Because why would I suspect him? Ethan had been my closest friend since college. He had been the best man at our wedding, had stood beside me as I made vows to the woman who was now writing about her secret desires in a diary hidden in our attic. My stomach churned. I kept reading. September 17th, I told myself I would stop. That last time was the last time. But then I saw him today, and it's like my body betrays me before I even have a chance to think. We were careful, but Mike was there. God, what if he noticed? I pressed my fingers against my temple, a sharp, nauseating pressure building behind my eyes. I had been there. That day. It had been a party at our house, one of the many game nights we hosted with our friends. I had been in the kitchen, grabbing drinks, while Natalie and Ethan had been in the living room, laughing over some inside joke. I had smiled, poured another drink, and walked back into the room completely unaware that I was the only fool in it. A bitter laugh bubbled up in my throat, but it died before it reached my lips. I wasn't laughing, because this wasn't funny. This was my life. I closed the diary and stood up. My hands were trembling, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. I needed to move, to do something before the rage building inside me tore me apart from the inside out. I walked downstairs, the walls of my own home feeling foreign, like I had stepped into someone else's life. The photos on the shelves, the smiling wedding pictures, the framed memories of vacations and anniversaries, felt like a mockery now. A carefully curated lie. I poured myself a drink. Whiskey. Neat. The burn did nothing to numb the ache. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. Confront her? Throw the diary in her face and demand answers? Or did I wait? Did I play the fool a little longer, just long enough to set my own trap? Because if there was one thing I was certain of now, it wasn't over. Natalie thought she had buried her lies in the attic, sealed them away in ink on pages she believed would never be found. She was wrong, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed beside Natalie, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, feeling the weight of her betrayal pressed down on my chest like a vice. She looked so peaceful, wrapped in our sheets, the same sheets where we had made love, whispered secrets, built a life together. Now, all I could think about was how many times she had come home to this bed after being in his. I clenched my jaw and turned away from her, staring at the ceiling. My body ached with the need to confront her, to shake her awake and demand she tell me the truth. But I held back. If there was one thing I knew for sure, it was this. I wasn't going to let my emotions control me. Not yet. I needed proof. The diary was damning, yes. But words on a page weren't enough. I needed to catch her in the act. I needed her to feel the way I felt right now. Exposed, powerless, betrayed. So I did something I never thought I would do. I started playing the game. The next morning, I kissed Natalie on the forehead before heading to work, just like I always did. She smiled up at me, her lips curving in that familiar way that used to make my heart swell. "You're in a good mood today," she said, stretching lazily beneath the covers. I forced a smirk. "Guess I just slept well." "Lie." She hummed and rolled onto her side, completely unaware that I had read her darkest secrets the night before. I walked out of the house feeling like a stranger in my own skin. At work, I went through the motions, barely hearing my colleagues, barely noticing the emails piling up in my inbox. My mind was elsewhere, stuck in the pages of that diary. I kept replaying her words, dissecting every detail, searching for something, anything, that would tell me how long this had really been going on. The diary had mentioned Ethan, but I had a sinking feeling that he wasn't the only one. Natalie had been lying to me for years. How far did the betrayal go? That evening, I decided to test her. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she chopped vegetables for dinner. She looked so normal, so innocent, it made my stomach turn. I leaned against the counter, watching her. "Hey, Nat." She glanced up, smiling. "Yeah. I ran into Ethan today." It was a lie. I hadn't seen him, but I wanted to see her reaction. Her hand stilled for just a second, a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Oh," she said, too casual. "How's he doing?" I shrugged, pretending not to notice the way she avoided my gaze. "Same as always. Said we should all get together soon." A beat of silence. Then she forced a laugh, shaking her head. "We see Ethan all the time. I swear, you two are attached at the hip." "Not anymore," I thought. I pushed further. "Yeah, but it's been a while since we had a real night out. Maybe this weekend? I'll invite him over. Just the three of us." She turned back to the cutting board, her knife moving just a little too fast now. "I don't know if I'll be free this weekend," she said lightly. "Work's been crazy. I might have to put in some extra hours." Lies. I knew because I had checked her work schedule earlier that day. She wasn't scheduled for a damn thing. But I just nodded, hiding my smirk behind a sip of beer. "Yeah, makes sense. Let me know. Game on." I didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I played the role of the oblivious husband perfectly. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, sent sweet texts in the afternoons, brought home her favorite wine on a random Wednesday. And all the while I watched. I listened. I paid attention. And what I found made my blood run cold. Natalie wasn't just cheating on me with Ethan. There were others. The names were different, but the patterns were the same: late night, work emergencies, unexplained absences, rushed showers when she got home. It was all in the diary. Page after page, a history of betrayal that stretched back farther than I had ever imagined. Different men, different excuses, and I had been blind to all of it. Until now. I wasn't going to be blind anymore. No. I was going to make her see. I had always thought of lies as fragile things, thin strands that snapped under the weight of truth. But Natalie's lies weren't fragile. They were a web, carefully spun over years, intricate and almost impossible to untangle. The diary was just the beginning. Now that I was paying attention, I saw the cracks everywhere. It started with her phone. Natalie had never been secretive about it before. She used to leave it on the nightstand, face up, unbothered by notifications. But now it was always in her hand, screen turned away, or tucked into her bag as soon as she walked through the door. If I got too close while she was texting, she'd lock it instinctively, her fingers tightening around the device. Then there were the calls. Late at night, when she thought I was asleep, she would slip out of bed and step into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. I would hear the soft murmur of her voice, too low to make out the words. When she returned, she'd slide under the covers without a word, her back turned to me. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I watched. And I planned. The turning point came on a Friday night. Natalie had told me she was going out with the girls. Another lie, but I played along. I kissed her on the cheek as she walked out the door, told her to have fun, and then waited exactly 5 minutes before grabbing my keys. I already knew she wasn't going where she said she was. I had checked the diary again that morning. There was an entry from just a week ago. Friday night, our usual place. Same time. He says he misses me. I told him I feel the same, but I don't know what to do. I love Mike. But I love this too. Our usual place. I clenched my jaw and gripped the steering wheel as I drove, following the route I already knew she would take. A bar on the other side of town. Not a fancy place, but not the kind of spot you'd go for a casual girls' night either. I parked a block away and waited. At exactly 9:15, Natalie arrived. She stepped out of her car, checking her phone before smoothing her dress, the same one I had bought her for our anniversary last year. The sight of it made my stomach turn. Then he arrived. Not Ethan. A different man. Tall. Well-dressed. A stranger. She smiled when she saw him. Not the polite smile she gave coworkers. Not the forced smile she gave me when she was pretending everything was fine. No, this was her real smile. The kind of smile that used to belong to me. I gripped my phone tighter, my knuckles turning white as I watched them step inside together. I could have followed them. I could have walked through those doors, grabbed her by the wrist, and exposed her right then and there. But that would have been too easy. No, I needed more. I needed her to feel what I was feeling now. So I waited. And I recorded. 2 hours later, she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. I was sitting on the couch, nursing a beer, pretending to watch TV. She hesitated in the doorway when she saw me. You're still up? I glanced at the clock. It's not that late. She walked past me, heading straight for the kitchen, her back rigid. We had a good time. Lisa got way too drunk, as usual. Lisa. Her alibi. The woman she was supposedly out with tonight. The lie slid so easily from her lips, it made my skin crawl. I took a slow sip of my beer. Yeah? What bar did you guys go to? She opened the fridge, keeping her face hidden. Oh, that place downtown. The one with the blue lights. Another lie. I had driven past that bar tonight. It had been closed for renovations. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to nod. Sounds fun. She turned then, flashing me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was. I stared at her for a long moment, memorizing the way she looked in this moment, the slight flush on her cheeks, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear like she was nervous. Did she know? Could she feel that I knew? If she did, she didn't show it. I let it go for now, because the trap was set, and soon, she wouldn't just be lying to me. She'd be lying to everyone. I used to think I knew my wife. I used to believe that when she smiled at me, it was real, that when she said she loved me, she meant it. But after what I saw at the bar, after the lies she fed me so easily when she walked through that door, I knew the truth. Natalie wasn't just cheating. She was a master at it. And if she had been playing a game all these years, then it was time I started playing, too. The first thing I did was cover my tracks. I went back to the attic and returned the diary to exactly where I had found it, aligning it perfectly with the dust patterns so she wouldn't suspect a thing. I didn't want her to know that I knew. Not yet. Then, I started laying the groundwork. I began dropping small, calculated hints, little tests to see just how deeply she had dug herself into this web of deception. I started with the phone. One night, as we sat on the couch watching TV, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it quickly, then flipped it over so the screen was hidden. Who was that? I asked casually, taking a sip of my drink. She barely hesitated. Lisa. I nodded. Tell her I said hi. Natalie forced a small smile. She just sent a dumb meme. Nothing interesting. I let the silence stretch. I wanted to see if she would check her phone again. She didn't. Not in front of me, at least. The moment I left the room, though, I watched through the reflection in the hallway mirror as she picked up her phone and started typing furiously. Lisa, huh? I made a mental note. The next move was Ethan. I needed to know how much of what I had read in the diary was past, and how much was still happening. So I reached out. Drinks this weekend? I texted him. Been too long. His reply came fast. Hell yeah, man. Let's do it. Bastard. He had no idea what was coming. That Saturday, we met at our usual bar. The same one where I had caught Natalie with the other guy. Ethan greeted me with a grin, clapping me on the back like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't slept with my wife. We ordered our drinks, and I let him steer the conversation, talking about work, sports, the usual nonsense. I played along, nodding, laughing at all the right moments. Then I tested him. So, what's new with you? I asked, swirling the ice in my glass. Anything exciting? He shrugged. Same old, same old. Work's a pain in the ass, but what else is new? I watched him carefully. Seeing anyone? His grip tightened around his beer for just a second, so fast I almost missed it. Nah, he said, shaking his head. Haven't really had the time. Liar. I leaned back, smirking slightly. Come on, man. No secret romance. No late-night flings. He laughed, but it was forced. If only. You know how it is. I did. I really did. I let the conversation drift after that, not pushing too hard. I didn't need him to suspect anything. Not yet. When we parted ways, I watched him walk to his car, his shoulders relaxed, completely unaware that the noose around his lies was already tightening. But I wasn't done yet. I still needed one more piece of proof. The final part of the trap came on Tuesday. Natalie had another late night at work. At least, that's what she told me. I already knew where she was going. I tracked her phone. The same phone I had installed a location-sharing app on while she was asleep. She wasn't at work. She was at a hotel. A hotel. The moment I saw the address, a cold calm settled over me. This was it. The moment of truth. I grabbed my keys and left. I drove with a strange sense of calm. There was no rage boiling inside me, no shaking hands or frantic breathing. I had passed that stage days ago. Now, all that was left was clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally accept the truth. My wife was a liar, a cheater, and tonight, I was going to catch her in the act. The hotel wasn't anything special. A mid-range place, just discreet enough for someone who didn't want to be seen, but not so cheap that it raised suspicions. I parked across the street and sat there for a moment, watching the entrance. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, maybe for reality to change, for fate to throw me a curveball and prove me wrong. But fate had already made its choice. At exactly 9:42 p.m., Natalie walked through the front doors. Alone. My heart pounded as I watched her approach the check-in desk, her lips moving as she gave a name, her fingers tapping anxiously against the counter. Seconds later, the receptionist handed her a keycard. She glanced around, paranoia flickering in her eyes, but she didn't see me. Then she disappeared into the elevator. I exhaled slowly. This was it. I stepped out of my car and crossed the street. The lobby was quiet, the kind of place where people minded their own business. The receptionist barely looked up as I walked past. I didn't need to ask what room she was in. I had already checked the tracking app. Room 214. I moved quickly, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. My footsteps felt too loud in the empty hallway as I approached the door. And then I heard it. Voices. A man's low murmur. Natalie's quiet laugh. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I could feel it now, the anger rising from somewhere deep inside, curling around my ribs, tightening my throat. But I swallowed it down. I had to be smart. I had to be careful. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit record before knocking on the door. Silence. Then, the rustle of movement. Footsteps. The door opened just a crack. And there she was. Natalie. Her eyes widened in pure, unfiltered shock. Mike. Her voice was barely a whisper. She looked over her shoulder, just for a second, but I caught it. I caught him. A shadow moving in the dim light. Another man. Another lie. I smiled. Cold. Empty. Surprise. Natalie froze. For a second, just a second, she looked like a child caught sneaking out past curfew. Eyes wide, lips parted, mind scrambling for an excuse she hadn't prepared. But nothing could save her now. Mike. She breathed, gripping the edge of the door like it could somehow keep the truth from spilling out into the hallway. I tilted my head, watching the panic flicker across her face. Aren't you going to invite me in? She didn't move, didn't speak, but I saw it in her eyes. The mental war happening inside her. The calculations. The desperate search for a lie that would get her out of this. And then, a voice. A man's voice. Who is it? Baby. Baby. The word hit me harder than a punch to the gut. Natalie flinched, just slightly, but it was enough. That was all I needed. I smiled, a slow, deliberate thing, and pushed the door open before she could stop me. And there he was, standing at the foot of the bed, half-dressed, smug, like he had every right to be here. Like I was the intruder. The bastard didn't even look surprised. If anything, he seemed annoyed, like I had interrupted something. Natalie was still frozen beside me, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I looked at her, then at him, then back at her, and I laughed. A low, humorless sound that made her flinch again. Are you going to introduce us? I asked. The man, tall, expensive-looking, younger, crossed his arms over his bare chest, his expression unreadable. I think we both know who we are. Smug. So smug. Natalie finally found her voice. Mike, save it. I didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't throw punches, though I wanted to. I just pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. The red blinking light of the recording app was still on. Her face drained of color. I turned the screen so she could see. Smile for the camera, sweetheart. Her breath hitched. Mike, please. She reached for me, but I stepped back, watching her with nothing but cold detachment. I wanted to feel pain. I wanted to feel rage. But all I felt was done. Here's what's going to happen, I said, tucking my phone away. You're going to pack your shit and be out of my house by tomorrow morning. Her lips trembled. Mike? I turned to the other man, my smirk sharpening. And you? I took a slow step forward, watching his cocky expression flicker just slightly. If I ever see your face again, you won't be so lucky. For the first time, he looked unsure. Good. I looked back at Natalie, letting her see everything in my eyes. The betrayal, the disgust, the finality. Then, I stepped out of the room. And without another word, I left. I don't remember walking through the hotel lobby. I don't remember the drive home. All I remember is the numbness. The way it wrapped around me, dulling everything. The pain, the betrayal, the reality of what had just happened. I had caught my wife with another man, and she hadn't even tried to fight for me. Not really. Not in the way I used to fight for her. I pulled into the driveway, shutting off the engine but not moving. The house stood in front of me, dark and silent, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. A place where love had once lived, now nothing more than a hollow, broken thing. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. This was it. The end. There was no fixing this. No second chances. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to fix it. Natalie had spent years lying to me. Cheating. Sneaking around while I was stupid enough to believe in us. She had left a trail of deceit so deep it made me sick to think about how many times I had kissed her, held her, made love to her, all while she was giving pieces of herself to someone else. To multiple men. I clenched my jaw and stepped out of the car. Inside, everything looked exactly the same. The framed photos on the wall. The faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. I moved through the house on autopilot, grabbing an old duffel bag from the closet and shoving in whatever I could fit. Clothes. My laptop. My passport. I wasn't going to stay here. Not tonight. Not while every room felt tainted. When I reached the nightstand, my eyes landed on something small and familiar. My wedding ring. I had taken it off before heading to the hotel, maybe because, on some level, I had known I wouldn't be the same man when I came back. I picked it up, rolling it between my fingers, remembering the day I had slipped it onto her hand. Forever, she had whispered, smiling up at me. What a joke. I dropped the ring into the nightstand drawer and slammed it shut. Let her find it. Let her see what she had destroyed. I zipped up the bag and slung it over my shoulder. Then, I walked out the door. And I didn't look back. I didn't sleep that night. I checked into a hotel, a different hotel, one far from the one Natalie had chosen for her affair. The irony of me sitting alone in a sterile, impersonal room while she had just been in one with someone else wasn't lost on me. I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying everything in my head. The diary. The other men. The moment I caught her in that hotel room, her lips parting in shock, her body frozen in guilt. I had imagined how it would feel to catch her, really catch her. I thought it would break me. Thought I would scream, throw punches, demand answers. But the truth was, I didn't need answers. I already knew everything I needed to know. By morning, my phone had a dozen missed calls and messages. Natalie, 2:14 a.m. Mike, please talk to me. I can explain. Natalie, 2:27 a.m. Where are you? Please come home. Natalie, 3:01 a.m. I made a mistake. Okay? But I love you. I love you. Natalie, for 17 a.m. I don't want to lose you. Please, just let me fix this. Pathetic. She had spent years making these choices. Years lying to my face. But the second she got caught, suddenly, she wanted to fix things? No. She didn't want to fix us. She just didn't want to face the consequences. I tossed my phone onto the hotel bed and went to take a shower, letting the hot water scald away the last traces of the night before. By the time I stepped out, a new text had come through. Not from Natalie. From Ethan. Ethan, 6:42 a.m. I heard what happened. Call me. I stared at the message for a long time. He heard? From who? Natalie? Someone else? I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. Ethan, the man I had once called my best friend. The man who had been laughing with me, drinking with me, standing next to me at my wedding, while he had been screwing my wife behind my back. Did he think I was stupid enough to talk to him? I should have ignored it. Blocked his number. Moved on. But I had one last thing to say to him. So I called. The phone barely rang twice before Ethan picked up. Mike. His voice was tense, cautious, like he wasn't sure if I was calling to scream at him or worse. I didn't say anything at first. Just let the silence stretch, let him squirm. Finally, I exhaled. You heard what happened? My voice was eerily calm. Even I didn't expect that. A pause. Yeah, of course, he did. Natalie must have gone running to him the moment I walked out of that hotel room. Figures. I ran a hand through my hair, leaning against the cold hotel wall. Which part did you hear? That she cheated? Or that she got caught? Ethan sighed. Mike, man, listen up. No. I cut in, my voice sharp. You listen. Because this is the last time we're ever going to have a conversation. He went quiet. Good. I let the words sink in before I continued. I read her diary, Ethan. I let that sit for a second, just long enough for him to understand what I meant. I know everything. His breath hitched, so faint I almost missed it. Almost. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, that's what I thought. Mike, shut up, I snapped. Just shut the hell up. You don't get to explain. You don't get to talk. Silence. I could feel his guilt through the phone, thick and suffocating. And yet, a part of me still wanted to know. Why? So I asked. When did it start? My voice was quieter now, but no less dangerous. Ethan hesitated. Mike, man, it was a mistake. When did it start? A long pause. Then, finally, 3 years ago. I closed my eyes, pressing a hand against my forehead. 3 years. They had been doing this for 3 years. All those nights we had spent hanging out, watching football, grabbing drinks, he had already slept with my wife. I laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You looked me in the eye. For 3 years, you looked me in the eye and called yourself my friend. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to? I repeated, my grip tightening around the phone. You didn't mean to sleep with my wife behind my back? You didn't mean to smile in my face while you were screwing her? Ethan exhaled sharply, but he didn't deny it. Because he couldn't. You know what the worst part is? I muttered, shaking my head. I actually thought I could trust you. Mike? Don't. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I want you to listen very carefully, Ethan. My voice was cold. Final. I don't ever want to hear from you again. I don't want to see you. Don't want to hear your name. Don't want any part of my life to ever intersect with yours again. You're done. We're done. And if you ever come near me, or if I ever find out you've reached out to Natalie, I swear to God. I stopped myself. Because Ethan wasn't worth the rage. He wasn't worth my anger. He was nothing. I exhaled slowly. You're a coward. And she's a liar. You two deserve each other. Then, before he could say another word, I hung up, blocked his number, deleted it. And just like that, Ethan was gone. I expected silence after that. After walking out of that hotel room. After cutting Ethan off for good. I thought Natalie would have enough shame to let me go. I was wrong. The next evening, as I was packing up the last of my things from the hotel, there was a knock at my door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. I hesitated for half a second. I could ignore her. I could pretend she didn't exist, leave her standing out there in the cold like she deserved. But something in me, maybe the part that needed closure, wanted to see the look in her eyes when I told her exactly what she had thrown away. So I opened the door, and there she was, Natalie. She looked like a wreck, her hair a mess, her face pale, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept. Like she had spent the last 24 hours actually feeling something. Good. She swallowed hard, clutching the strap of her purse. Can I come in? No. Her lips parted slightly, like she wasn't expecting me to be so blunt. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Say what you came to say, Natalie. She inhaled shakily. Mike, please, just talk to me. Let me explain. I laughed, shaking my head. Explain what? How you spent the last 3 years lying to my face. How you let me kiss you, love you, build a life with you while you were screwing my best friend. Her breath hitched. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You ruined me. Tears welled in her eyes. I still love you. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, I leaned in just slightly, just enough that she thought, maybe, for a second, that I was softening. And I said the one thing that I knew would break her. I don't love you. Her face crumbled. A strangled sob left her lips as she reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't, I said sharply. Don't touch me. Don't beg. Don't try to fix this. Because you can't. Her tears fell freely now. Mike, please, I was stupid. I was selfish, I was wrong, but I love you. No, you don't. I shook my head. You don't love me, Natalie. You love what I gave you. You love that I was safe. That I was the idiot who trusted you. Who made you feel like a good person when you were anything but. She covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I didn't care. She had spent years making me feel like a fool. Now it was her turn. I exhaled slowly, standing up straighter. I'm filing for divorce first thing Monday morning. I'll send you the papers. I suggest you sign them. Her eyes snapped up to mine, desperate now. Mike, wait. I stepped back, and I shut the door in her face. The door shut with a quiet click, sealing her on the other side. I stood there for a moment, listening. At first, there was nothing. Just silence. Then, soft, broken sobs. The sound of her breathing uneven, her body trembling as she finally realized what she had done. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything for her. Not anymore. After a few minutes, the sound of her footsteps faded down the hall. The elevator dinged. And just like that, she was gone. I followed through with my promise. Monday morning, I met with a lawyer. The divorce papers were drawn up fast, quicker than I expected, but maybe that was because I had nothing left to fight for. No children. No shared businesses. Just a house I didn't want and memories I refused to keep. When Natalie received the papers, she didn't call, didn't text, didn't beg this time. Maybe she finally understood that there was nothing left to save. A week later, she signed. And that was it. 8 years of marriage. Over with the stroke of a pen. I moved out of the house the same month. Left behind the wedding photos, the anniversary gifts, the bed where she had slept next to me while keeping someone else's secrets. I wasn't taking those ghosts with me. Ethan, I never saw him again. I heard through mutual friends that his marriage fell apart too. Apparently, his wife found out about his extracurricular activities around the same time I did. I like to think that maybe she got my little parting gift, the diary pages I mailed to her, photocopied and neatly highlighted. Poetic justice. A year later, I was better. Not healed. Maybe I never would be. But I was no longer the man sitting in a dark hotel room, drowning in betrayal. I was someone new, stronger, wiser. And when I finally stopped looking at the past, I realized something. Natalie may have shattered me, but I was the one who put myself back together. And this time, this version of me, no one would ever break him again. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.